Hello and welcome to the debut episode of One Place Specials, a show in which we have a very special conversation on a special topic with a very special guest. Today's conversation entails an AMA or an Ask Me Anything with a very special guest, Ayaz Memon, who's the editor in chief here at One Place Sports, a journalist, a columnist, a commentator with over 40 years of experience in the field of sports journalism. So, without further ado, let's introduce Ayaz to the front stage. Ayaz, how's it going?
I'm fine, Anubhav. How are you doing? How's the lockdown treating you?
The lockdown's treating me well. Before we actually get underway, just a couple of announcements that I'd like to make to the viewers. Firstly, apologies for the slightly delayed start. I know we were supposed to start around 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time, but we started about 35 to 40 minutes late. That's because Cyclone Amphan has been causing riot here in Calcutta, and it didn't quite spare the electricity in my household. But I asked, I'm not sure if this is good news or bad news. I am pretty sure that, come the end of this discussion, Cyclone Amphan will seem relatively calm compared to the storm of questions that will be coming your way throughout the EMA.
Well, I'm all there, ready to go. Not to worry.
Fantastic. And the second announcement, talking about the storm of questions, is that unless, in case you're not familiar with how an AMA works, an AMA basically is an acronym for Ask Me Anything, which gives you the license to ask my guest of honor, Ayaz Memon, anything professional, personal. I'm not sure if you came across Ayaz's promo, but he talked about how you should be throwing bouncers his way. Having worked with Ayaz for a little bit of time, let me tell you that he has a solid defense and he's very good at playing the straightforward, innocuous deliveries. So I think it'll take something special to beat him. So you have to be bowling your bouncers and your beamers and your flippers and your googlies and your wrong guns. Am I right, Ayaz?
Oh, absolutely. I've been around for a very long while, as you can see. And the first thing you do is you build up a good defense, whatever you're doing in place in sport. So yeah, but I'm really looking forward. I think the idea of an interactive session like this is that it should be no holds barred. Uh, so I'm whatever people want to ask, and especially about sport. If I'm knowledgeable enough and capable enough, I'll provide the answers. I don't want to duck anything. There's no humming and hawing, and I'll be there up front.
Absolutely. So there you go. So you have the license from Ayaz to be asking all your questions. In order for you to actually pose your questions, you simply have to type out your question in the comment section. We're live on Facebook. We're live on Hello on our One Play Sports platforms. So simply type out your questions in the comment section, and I will be sure to look at the comment section throughout the stream and pick out some of the juiciest questions that you'll be throwing Ayaz's way. Ayaz, as the host and the moderator, let me just take the liberty of asking you the first question. So, of course,
Yes.
having read up a fair bit on your background, I was fairly intrigued when I found out that you are a lawyer by qualification. You have a degree in economics and law from Bombay University. So, why the pivot to journalism? Where did that begin? Like, walk me through the genesis of that pivot from economics and law to journalism.
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but I'll try and make it as short as possible. So when I was young in school, and I actually aspired to be an engineer. My father was a lawyer, and the one thing which I didn't want to do was to do law or study law, because everybody, when you're growing up, they say, "Arey, baap lawyer hai, tum bhi lawyer ban jao," etc., etc. But when I went into college, I realized I really didn't have the brains or the mind for doing engineering. I've struggled with higher maths and physics, etc., etc. I was very good at chemistry and biology, but not so good at physics and maths. So then I kind of switched. I changed tracks and I got into economics and I did the humanities. And well, journalism was never in my, on my radar. I didn't know what between graduation and law school. I was wondering what to do. So I joined St. Xavier's College. I was doing college earlier in St. Xavier's too, but this was Xavier's Institute of Communications, where they had a journalism course which was in the evenings. So while I was doing law
Mhm.
college in the morning, I was doing journalism in the evening. And then while I was there, I actually got a job in Sports Week magazine. And then going back a long way, I think 78, 79. And I got a job and I realized that and I was always
It's 21 hours.
besotted by sports. And here I got access to the sporting arena. I got the ringside seat. You got the best seats in the behind the bowler's arm, sitting behind at the Wankhede Stadium, for instance. And I realized that I'm being paid to write on sports, which was frankly, uh, you know, completely. It just bowled me over, so to speak. And I said, "Hey, this is the life I want." But it took me a while to come to terms with that. I really wanted to do journalism full time, and that decision was made after the World Cup win in 1983, which I went and saw. So when I saw India win that World Cup, my mind was made up. I was dithering till then whether I wanted to, come back into law. I got my degree. I actually struggled through my degree because I was doing a job in journalism. It was like I was vacillating between law or not to do law. And then the World Cup win in 1983 sealed the issue for me. I had my law degree, but I never practiced a day.
Fantastic, fantastic. Ayaz, a question coming in on our Hello platforms. Where does the nickname Cricket Wala stem from? And part two, where does the nickname Silver Fox originate from?
So Cricket Wala is actually, like there was a movie called Shakespeare Wala with Shashi Kapoor and Leela Naidu, if I remember correctly. Very old movie, Hindi cinema. And it had kind of stuck in my head. I said, this is Shakespeare Wala it was a very engaging title. And then there's a British writer, British journalist, cricket writer called Skilled Berry or Shield Berry. He's only recently retired from the Daily Telegraph. And he wrote a book called Cricket Wala on his tours of India and Pakistan, if I remember correctly, in the 80s or late 70s. And so when I got into social media, I was always writing on cricket. That was my calling card, so to speak, writing on cricket. And I said, hey, if I want a name for myself, this is when social media was just kind of arriving. I'm talking of maybe 20 years back, 22 years back. And I said, if there's a title I would want, it is this. And I realized that the title was open. It was available. So I took that title. And the Silver Fox? Silver Fox
Understood.
is...
And Silver Fox.
Yeah, Silver Fox is... I'm not 100% sure whether it is Ravi Shastri who gave me the title Silver Fox because of the hair which I've got, and now it's... at one time it was salt and pepper, now it's all silver. Or is it Navjot Singh Sidhu? I'm a little still... This happened, I think, after the 1989 tour of West Indies, when both of them were on that touring party. And I grayed prematurely. I had a lot of silver in my hair already 22, 23 years back. And I think it was Navjot Singh Sidhu who gave me this title. And then it kind of stuck, whoever talks to me now, because Navjot Singh Sidhu and I also did commentary together. So he would introduce me when we were doing commentary together as Silver Fox. So the name kind of stuck.
Understood. Fantastic. Ayaz, of course, it's no secret that you have this immense love for the game of cricket. Your love for cricket knows no bounds. But apart from cricket, what sport do you like watching the most? What comes second in line? What plays second fiddle to cricket?
So two of my greatest experiences, sporting experiences in my career, have been going for the Olympics. At the multidiscipline event. I went for my first Olympics in 1988, before you were born, Anubhav. So that was the year in which we had what they call the race of the century, Carl Lewis versus Ben Johnson. And then I went for the 2012 Olympics, where I saw Usain Bolt. But I saw great athletes. The Olympics opens up a panorama of sporting excellence, whether it's a Carl Lewis or a Usain Bolt, or whether it's, all kinds of the high jumpers, the Edwin Moses, Seb Coe, who I saw in 1988, Sebastian Coe, who is now one of the leading officials or administrators in the world of athletics. I've seen P.T. Usha. Then, of course, there are the hockey players, the great hockey players that we've had, Zafar Iqbal, Mohammad Shahid, etc., right up to Dhanraj Pillai, and now the current team, of course. So, multidiscipline events have always been of a great attraction for me. I've also actually done a World Cup hockey tournament in 1990. Apart from the Olympics, I've done Commonwealth Games twice, Asian Games a couple of times, the World Cup football in 2006. I've done the Wimbledon Championships in 1991 and 93. So I've done a fair bit of sports, but the constant companion has been cricket, and that's largely because India has been such a strong cricketing nation.
Absolutely. So many feathers in your cap. Ayaz, you briefly touched upon the 1983 World Cup, right? And your experience there. Now, I'm pretty sure we can do a separate episode on this, talking about your experiences there and everything that you witnessed. But our viewers may or may not know that I think you were one of the few people, I think one of perhaps 20 or 30 people who actually witnessed Kapil Dev's 175 against Zimbabwe at Tunbridge Wells in the 1983 World Cup. I think India were in tatters at 17 for 5, and
9 for
Kapil
4
rescued
and
them,
then
and India
17 for 5.
absolutely, absolutely. And then India ended up posting a very respectable total and then defending it successfully. So is that the greatest ODI innings that you've seen? If not, if yes, what are some of the other ones that come close to it? And if not, tell me which is the greatest ODI innings that you've seen so far.
I mean, look, not in terms of if you take a measure of runs, then obviously you've got Rohit Sharma, who's got 3 double centuries. There's Sehwag, and of course the first man to do it, Sachin Tendulkar. But in my opinion, Kapil Dev's 175 for me still rates as the greatest ODI innings for 2 reasons. For the dire situation that India were in that match, to pull the team out of that crisis, win the match, and then of course, the impact it had on the rest of the tournament and the sport itself, cricket itself subsequently, because India kind of turned the cricket world upside down. So that 175 had many dimensions to it rather than just the volume of runs. The other is from a purely cricketing point of view, Kapil Dev was not your number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 number batsman. He was not your top order. He was a great all-rounder, but you would expect perhaps a Viv Richards to play this kind of an innings, a Saeed Anwar, certainly a Tendulkar or an Inzamam or Virat Kohli or certainly Rohit Sharma. For an all-rounder, not batting in the top order, not like a Jack Cullis, but batting at number 6 or number 7 usually, to come and play this kind of a knock was extraordinary. So it bespoke the talent, the natural gifts that Kapil Dev had, the utter fearlessness. I mean, you go into that situation, you would think that somebody would, you might crack up, you might lose your nerve, your legs, your knees go completely jelly. But here was this guy, he just, got into this counter-attacking mode and took India from a hopeless situation to a winning place, a winning position. And that was not the only innings that Kapil Dev has played, which was brilliant. I can name a few more in Test cricket, which was quite outstanding. So he's got I think he made a 76 against England at Lords in 1990, and India had to make 24 runs to avoid the follow-on. And he was facing Eddie Hemmings, and the first 2 balls he patted down the wicket to Eddie Hemmings, and the next 4 balls he hit for 6. 4 of them. Look at the bravado, the risk-taking ability, and not just the ability, but executing it so well. As it happened, as soon as he had avoided the follow-on, the next over, Narendra Hirwani, I think, was his partner, who he got dismissed. So it was just as well that Kapil Dev hit that, 4 sixes. Of course, India couldn't save the match, but that's a different story. So to come back to the 1983 World Cup, the enormity of that innings, from the sheer volume of runs, 175 not out, and 175 out of 262. That was his score. So he had made about 65-70% of the runs. And then the impact it had on the sport, because cricket got the biggest boost ever in the India became the mecca of cricket subsequently. After the 2007 win in the T20 World Championship, India has become, apart from the mecca, also the El Dorado, because so much money has come into Indian cricket, and then the IPL of course came. So, but a lot of how we see India today, the power it wields in the ICC, in the world of cricket, and the money it has, it can be traced back to the 1983 World Cup win. And obviously, when you go that deep, you have to. The pivotal factor there is Kapil Dev's 175 not out.
Brilliant, absolutely staggering facts. Those you spoke about India becoming the mecca of cricket, right? Some people might say, who knows? Ayaz Memon as an entity is the mecca of sports journalism. We have a question coming in from Neha, and Neha's asking us, sir, tell us, when did your love for sports happen? You spoke about this, talking about your internship with Sports Week, but the second part of the question is a very interesting one. She's asking, who was your idol in sports journalism? Were there people that you looked up to in the field of sports journalism when you were first starting out as a rookie?
Oh, of course, yes. I mean, I think I got. I mean, those days there was no TV in Bombay where we lived in the mid '60s when I was growing up, and I actually got passionately involved in sports, in following sports. I think it was around 63, 64. As it happened, you get a book. My father gave me a book, which is a copy of Wisdom, and I started reading it, and you suddenly find a whole new world unraveling in front of you. And you want to go deeper and deeper into that world. And, it's a magical world. It's about sports, it's about records, it's Bradman's staggering 99.94 average, it's somebody else taking 10 wickets, Jim Laker, and things like that start, kind of filling up your hard disk. And then you want to actually, you played a little gully cricket, and then you want to know a little more and maybe watch some matches. And the first match I watched in a stadium was India versus Australia, and it goes back a long, long way, 1964. I was 8 years old, and that was a test match that India won at the Brabant Stadium. So imagine when you're 8 years old, you go there, and in those days there were not so many restrictions. After the match, I remember it was a close fought match, India winning by 2 wickets, and we all jumped onto the ground from the stands where we were and ran towards the CCI pavilion, and we saw Pataudi and Chandrasekhar and some of these great names standing on that balcony of the CCI, and it was a moment that I can recall vividly, and that was a winning moment for me to watch India winning the match, and it made me a cricket convert then. And then you keep seeing more matches at the grounds. I started seeing first class matches, test matches if they were played there in the East Stand, the cheapest stands. But it was such great fun. This was like a dream come true to go and watch a match, and then it just kind of built up from there. And then I got acquainted with newspapers and reading people who write about sport, and then you read more than just cricket, and you realize that, hey, you also enjoy reading about tennis or hockey, and India were a great hockey power in those days in the '60s and '70s, and then the Olympics come. So that's how you get introduced and engaged with sports, and then of course you get obsessed by it. And it's not very different for a lot of people growing up. Even today in India, that's how you would have got involved in sports, because in your environment you start getting acquainted with sports, and you find that it kind of drives your passion. So, and then the people who impressed me, and those were all writers actually, and some of them commentators. So there was K.N. Prabhu of the Times of India, who used to write. His prose was like music. He was so well read and so erudite. So then there was Ron Hendricks, who used to write for the Indian Express. Again, he was not poetic in his prose, but he was very analytical and he was very hard hitting. And then there was Khalid Ansari, who was the editor of and the founder and the owner of Sports Week magazine, where I actually worked. My first job was there. I could never believe it, because I was a great follower of Sports Week magazine, reading Khalid Ansari's no holds barred, editorials, where he would fight tooth and nail with officials. And then here I am getting my first job in Khalid Ansari's empire, and then working alongside him, and then of course
Oh,
obviously
wow.
meeting him, and we covered an Olympics together, 1988, incidentally.
Fantastic, fantastic. Lovely stories there. So, lots of questions pouring in. Just a friendly reminder to all the viewers watching on Facebook and hello, keep the questions coming. I am picking the best of the lot. We have Akshay here who's asking us a question about Kapil Dev's 175. So, Ayaz did answer this question a few minutes back. So, definitely rewind and listen into whatever Ayaz had to say. And Akshay, let me tell you, we will do a separate episode with Ayaz talking about just that magical 175 that. Ayaz was lucky enough to actually witness at Tunbridge Wells during the World Cup.
Let me explain to Akshay that it was a stupendous knock.
I'll
I
go
can.
for it.
So it was an innings of a lifetime.
Lovely. That's a good way to sum it up. We have Priyam Saha who's asking us what has been the most funny moment you have come across while reporting? Ayaz, I'm pretty sure you've come across plenty. So,
Yeah.
what are the funniest ones?
So this is my first tour ever as a journalist. I'm 27 years old, and we've gone into Pakistan. That was my first tour, 1982, 83. And So we're in Lahore, and in those days, test matches used to have a rest day. After the third day, there would be a rest day, and there was an official banquet, a dinner hosted by the then president of Pakistan, Ziaul Haq. And so the two teams were there, and I went in. Journalists were also called, and I was standing next to uh, Imran Khan and maybe Gavaskar, some of the other players. We were all kind of. I was obviously just kind of hanging on to every word they were speaking. This was my first tour. And then there was, I don't know if you've heard of this singer. She's been a great singer from the subcontinent called Noor Jahan. Noor Jahan
Yes.
was, the predecessor of Lata Mangeshkar, and a towering figure in the world of music and showbiz. Then living in Pakistan, and so while I was there, she came up to that group which was there, and she kind of addressed it to me, saying, "इतना अच्छा लगता है when you all play, but आप लोग आपस में लड़ते क्यों हैं?" And she was referring to me and Imran Khan. For some reason, she thought I was Kapil Dev. So what she referred to was the battle of all round.
Compliment for Kapil Dev.
Yeah, what
Compliment
she
for
was
Kapil Dev.
referring to obviously was this, because everybody was tom-tomming this great battle between the great all-rounders, Kapil Dev versus Imran Khan, or when he went to England, Kapil Dev versus Ian Botham. But I had, you know, obviously my hair was uh, more or less black then. I had a mustache, and I'm nowhere as tall as Kapil. Kapil is 6 feet. I'm a little below that. And certainly, I don't look at all like Kapil Dev. But how would Nurjahan know? So she thought she was she was talking shop in a cricket environment, and it kind of completely floored me. I didn't know what the hell to do. I couldn't catch on immediately. Then I realized that she's actually referring to Kapil Dev. It's nothing to do with me. So that was a real funny moment for me.
Superb, superb. It's Akshay again who has a second question. And he says, what was your feeling when India won the 1983 World Cup? I'm pretty sure you must have been delirious with joy. But tell me what your reaction was like, Ayaz. I'm curious to know. Of course, this was at Lords, right? Where were you sitting? Were you one of the perhaps there were lots of people who actually stormed the field, right? Were you one of them? What was your reaction? Where were you? How good was your view when Kapil Dev was actually lifting the World Cup?
So, I mean, if you are familiar with the Lord's cricket ground today, where the pavilion is, where the not the pavilion bang opposite the pavilion, the press is the press box today, and incidentally, it's called Sherry Blair's lips because the press box looks like Tony Blair's wife's lips, so it's called Sherry Blair's lips. But in 1983, the pavilion was where it was. The press box was at long leg, not very far from the pavilion. We were at an angle, but it's not diagonally opposite. So we had a view which was more or less from square leg or long leg. We didn't have a frontal view or a straight view. And once you went up, it was 3 or 4 stories high. Once you went up, you didn't want to come down because you would have to again run up rather than take an elevator, which would be painfully slow, and you didn't want to miss any of the action. So I watched the match from that press box. The only thing I can tell you is I reached a little late for that final because in my foolishness I thought that I might reach quicker by taxi in London when actually the best way to travel is by underground and by train. But since I was so excited about reaching the final, so actually I reached about 2 hours late, and or maybe an hour late, and when I was walking into the gate and to the press box, there was this big roar which went up, which was Sunil Gavaskar being dismissed, and there was all Caribbean. It was just all Caribbean kind of celebrations that were going on, and I was running up to the stairs to take my place, and Richie Benoit, the late Richie Benoit, was moving, I think, to another commentary position. Having maybe done television, he was going to radio or something or the other. And he stopped me. We met a couple of times. Not that he knew me too well, but he knew me as a journalist from India. And he said, "I'm still giving you the odds, 66 to 1. Those were the odds for an India win." 66-1 at the start of the tournament. He said, "You are in the final, but I'm still giving you 66-1." Which was an astounding odds for a two-horse race. I'm not a betting man at all, but at that point in time, I had a mild or actually a strong temptation. Maybe it's worth putting 20 pounds. And then I said, "Ye to bekar ho jayega, 20 pounds. How can India beat the West Indies? You know, this is money down the drain." So I said, "Thanks, but no thanks, Richie." And I ran up and took my seat. And of course, Kapil and gang turned the world upside down. So how did I celebrate? I think our celebrations, there were only about 6 journalists or 7 journalists from India at that point in time. Our celebrations began, in fact, from Kapil Days 175 when we beat Zimbabwe, then we beat Australia, then we beat so and so. But between the semi-final when we beat England and the final, there were I think 2 days in between or 3 days. I'm not exactly sure now. 25th June, I remember, was the final. But there were like 2 days. Those were spent totally partying because every Indian you met in London at that point in time wanted to party and celebrate India reaching the final. Post the final, it went through the roof, the celebrations. So that whole week, I think we were all just partying. And obviously, because who expected India to win at all? I mean, it was the biggest upset in the cricket world, I think, till then. For a team like India, which had in 2 previous World Cups had won only one match till then, and that was beating East Africa. So imagine what was India's reputation in ODI cricket, and there you are in 1983, they've gone and won the World Cup. So Akshay, it not only was it the feeling was so fantastic that as I mentioned earlier to Anubhav, that was the decision I took. Forget about law. I didn't practice a day. I then ended up becoming a cricket writer for the rest of my life.
Ayaz, मैं तो ये बोलूँगा, the 1983 World Cup was in England. You were in England when India won the World Cup. Coincidence? I think not. I'm pretty sure कुछ ना कुछ association है उधर. अच्छा, Ayaz, the next 2 questions, actually very thought-provoking questions. Talking about how the macro landscape has changed in sports journalism, as well as talking about some socio-economic factors that have actually had an impact on the game of sports. So the first one that I'll bring up is a question from Sunand Warrior, and he's talking about the apartheid. So he says, "We know so little about the era of South African cricket boycott due to apartheid. Can you tell us something about those times? Did the world really miss out on watching some greats play cricket because of the boycott?"
Most certainly. I think we've missed out on watching some really great talent. I mean, let's not forget, in 1969, the Australian team, which is regarded as perhaps the best team in the world at that point in time, came to India. They beat India 2-1. And from here, they went straight to South Africa, which is actually the last series that South Africa played before the ban. And South Africa whipped Australia 4-0 in a 4-test match series. It was so one-sided, the contest, that, it created great turmoil in Australia. But what it threw up was talent like Barry Richards, Mike Proctor, Eddie Barlow, Ali Barker, Peter Pollock, Colin Bland. It's an all-time great lineup if you see. Having said that, I have a take on the South African issue. I think apartheid is the most reprehensible thing that one can think of. There's communalism, there's casteism, and equally, if not more reprehensible, is apartheid. And I'll tell you, in 1991, when South Africa opened up, when Nelson Mandela was released in 1990 from jail, or 1990, I think, and then he became subsequently the president of South Africa, and he was the African National Congress leader. There was a merger happening. They wanted to drop apartheid. Obviously, that's why Nelson Mandela was released from jail. They wanted to have a merger of the cricket board. That means mixed teams would play. There would be no color ban as there were earlier, that only whites could play. So I was amongst 3 journalists who were called to South Africa by Dr. Ali Bakar from India. There was one, R. Mohan from the Hindu, and Kishore Bhimani from the Statesman then. 3 of us went because one of the people they had called was Sunil Gavaskar. And then they had called Sir Garfield Sobers from the West Indies, and they'd called Richie Benaud, and they'd called some people from England. They also called Imran Khan, but Imran didn't turn up for whatever reason. They wanted to showcase the development program, how they are integrating, people of different colors and different races, etc. But what struck me, because we had a chance, Nelson Mandela in those days was still staying in Soweto, which was a black township in the heart of Johannesburg, or just a little away from, not in the heart of Johannesburg, but a little away from Johannesburg. It was an exclusive black community. Then there was, an exclusive Asian community, and one saw the fragmentation along racial lines. And I went and, it was like Soweto, though Nelson Mandela was staying there with his then wife, Winnie Mandela, was like a ghetto. Like, it's like, maybe not as shanty ridden as, say, a Dharavi, but not much better. And you realize the horrors of apartheid through that. I went to my first ground, which we went to when India played there in 93, 92, 93, was Durban. We played the first test match there. And when we went to the stands, some of the stands were like cages. They were like where you keep animals. And those cages were where non-white fans and spectators could watch matches from. So the horrors of apartheid were enormous. I think the ban was justified. It was unfortunate that it affected a lot of cricketers who didn't believe in apartheid. You know, like a Barry Richards, who I've spoken. I mean, subsequently when everything opened up, and I had a long chat with Barry Richards and with Mike Doctor at different parts, different times, and they were against Ali Bakr. But while apartheid was in force, it was the most horrid thing you can imagine. So now, if you go, the scene is very different. I'm talking of till 91, 92. It looked a different world, South Africa.
Absolutely. That was definitely a serious question there, and it led to a serious conversation. So why not provide some comic relief in the form of these next three questions, which are, the next three questions, Ayaz, I would request you to actually provide snappy answers. So let's make it challenging. I won't give you more than 5 to 7 seconds to answer each of them. So the first one that's coming your way is, if you were reborn as an athlete, who would you like to be reborn as?
Without a doubt, Muhammad Ali, the boxer. I mean, he's the greatest sports person I can think of. He's the greatest. Not by his own rhetoric or his own boast or bragging or whatever else. He was just simply the greatest. And because he was not just a great boxer, he was, he had a dimension of many dimensions beyond just the sport. He was an activist. He was a thought leader. He turned things upside down in the United States. He suffered a lot for it. He refused to go and fight in Vietnam. He was banned for 3 years, came back, became champion again. And look, he left behind a legacy which is unmatched by any sportsman in any discipline.
Next one from Nandini Garg, and she's asking us, who has been the best Indian captain according to you?
This is a really tough one. So I can pick a few captains who I think have been fantastic. So obviously in the modern age, you would think of Saurav Ganguly, MS Dhoni, but I also think Anil Kumble, who had a very short stint as a captain, would have made a very good captain. And a lot of people underestimate Rahul Dravid's captaincy, but actually during his captaincy, we won the West Indies, and we also won in England 2 away series. He had a short career as a captain. Right. I think Virat, Ravi Shastri keeps saying he's still work in progress, but I think, there's a character of there's a persona to Virat which is very different from the others. He's a live wire. He's in your face. He's like supersonic energy on the field. He's not the reclining, reticent captain which a Dhoni was, for instance, standing behind the stumps and Captain Cool, etc., etc. Going back in time, I also think one must take cognizance of the fact that Mansoor Ali Khan Pataudi actually gave Indian cricket a boost and a push in a certain direction, which paid rich dividends for India. Under him, we won our first test overseas. Then under him, the spinners came into the formation of the spinners, the great spinners, Bedi, Prasanna, Chandra, Venkat. The close-in fielders and the field placing all came under Pataudi. And then Gavaskar on his day could be he's a magnificent thinker of the game. the 1985 World Championship of Cricket, which we've talked about in the past somewhere, was, he was captain and marshaled his resources extremely well. But, Saurav Ganguly, as I mentioned his name, India learning to play aggressively overseas or not buckling down. Earlier we might think, oh, but we can't beat these guys, so you buckle down. But on the Saurav, they showed a lot of spunk and spine. From sheer longevity now, it would appear 42 months before India got toppled from number 1 in the ICC rankings to number 3 now recently. This team under Virat Kohli for 42 consecutive months was number 1 in Test cricket. A fair number of months even in ODI cricket. So there are different measures, different ways of looking at things. But I think you have to look at it in spells. So the Ganguly spell was very productive. The Dhoni spell, winning the World Cup, winning the 2007 T20 World Cup, becoming number 1 in Test cricket, hugely productive. And of course now also Virat Kohli's tenure. But as I keep reminding, don't forget what Anil Kumble and Rahul Dravid have done.
Absolutely. Next one from Sanjeev Nair, and Sanjeev is asking us if Ayaz Memon wasn't a journalist, columnist, commentator, wasn't the grand old man of Indian journalism, what would Ayaz Memon be?
I actually, if I could still do something else beyond doing journalism and sports journalism and what have you, I would like to become a dog whisperer. In our house we've got 4 dogs, actually 5. One is a dog of the soil, in our outhouse in Alibag. But I'm just getting to understand dogs so much more and better now. Now that we're all locked down and we're spending more time with dogs, or at least I am. I'm just finding them so fascinating. They've got such distinct personalities. I have 2 from the same litter. They're the same age. One is black, the other is white or fawn colored. And they are completely contrasting personalities. Both are females, and they are an absolute delight. And then there's another breed which is so canny, so clever, can run circles around the other 3 dogs because just smarter and sharper. And I think she's the captain of the team now between the 4 because she's just ahead of the curve. So if I had started earlier in trying to understand dogs, when we had an earlier dog trainer coming home and training the dogs, and I would say, okay, that's not my job. But I would, if I had a chance, I would start from learning how to be a dog trainer and a dog whisperer.
But look, I'm pretty sure you've had plenty of time during this lockdown to have honed that skill of yours. So if your dog's around, maybe we can see you in action, dog whispering.
They are now out they've gone for their meal. But you may have heard them were barking a little while ago.
I did. I really wanted them to be a part of the discussion as well. Maybe they were submitting their questions to me through the barking. Lovely. Next, we have Apurv Gosen, and Apurv is asking us if you have to rate the best number 3 batsman between Virat Kohli, Steve Smith, Joe Root, and Rahul Dravid. In which order would you do?
So actually, Joe Root has been up and down the order a bit. Kohli has become now settled in Test cricket, but number 3 he bats in ODIs and in T20s. In Test cricket, I would imagine this is a test match question. So Kohli at number 4, Smith also at number 4. He's not number 3, and Dravid is purely a number 3. So when you look at the volume and the body of work, you have to say that Dravid still, he's the level that the others would want to reach and exceed, go beyond him. Because let's not forget, Kohli, Smith, and Joe Root all have, in my opinion, about at least 7-8 years of good cricket remaining in them, barring an injury or a sudden collapse of form, which would be completely unexpected for the kind of caliber and the quality that they've got. And, Dravid's record would be under serious threat from all 3. But for sheer versatility across formats, I think Kohli is a nudge ahead. Smith's record in Test cricket is mind-boggling, especially after his comeback a year after the year's ban. I thought he would be under so much pressure that he might struggle. The guy's come out, he's just been, there's a deluge of runs from his bat.
Absolute
so
maverick.
Obviously he's a very tough cookie. He's very mentally tough, but so are the others. You can't survive in any sport, and especially in cricket, and especially in the longest format, when it goes over days and things change. Sometimes it's like a game of chess. Sometimes it's a mind game that is being played. Unless you're mentally tough, physically, of course, you have to be tough and strong. But unless you're mentally tough, you cannot become a great player. It's not possible.
Absolutely. So if you had to actually rank them, 1, 2, 3, 4, what would your rankings be?
So I'm saying the ranking would be unfair to, I mean, Dravid has got some, 10,000 plus runs. The others don't have so far. Kohli's Smith is now, he has surged ahead of everybody else in Test match cricket or Test batting. Joe Root has, fallen back a little, though he is still the best batsman from England. Kohli is by far the most versatile batsman across all formats. So I think there are distinct qualities for each. But I think that if these guys stay the course, all of them will make more runs than Dravid. And that will be really something. It'll show you how the game has evolved, because, for instance, Dravid never played T20 internationals. These guys have also had to add another format to their itinerary or their careers. And if they still excel, it's quite remarkable. It shows you how the game and the minds and the techniques of the players are evolving.
Absolutely. A question on sports journalism from Akanksha Joshi. Akanksha is a very regular contributor to One Play Sports feeds. And Akanksha is asking us, you have been reporting sports for many years now. How has the coverage of sports changed from the time you started? So you could answer this briefly. And a follow-up question that I have to Akanksha's question is, if you had to give 3 pieces of advice to a budding journalist, perhaps a budding sports journalist, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
So first things first, the sports reporting has changed quite substantially and dramatically. When I first went when I went on my first tour, I was carrying a portable manual typewriter, and our day actually would begin. There was very little TV. There was no social media. There was no digital platform. There was none of this. So your day would begin after the players stopped playing, maybe at 5 in the evening, where you started typing your story. And it would take you about an hour and a half to write out 600, 700, whatever the wordage that you had to. And you had to go to a telex machine where there would be an operator who would, you write a story on a foolscap sheet and give it to him. Then he cuts what they used to call cutter tape, which was like a Morse code, dots and, it would puncture holes, and there would be a tape. And I remember I was in Pakistan, my first tour. From there, they were from the telex machine, dial the number in my office in India, where the tape would be received. Now, getting the number from Pakistan to India was in itself a nightmare, a telephone line. So that would take, after you've worked for a couple of hours, then he's cut the tape, which would take about 15-20 minutes, because those guys were very good. Then you dial the number and you keep dialing and you keep dialing, and suddenly, hey, you hit pay dirt and it's gone. Line lag gaya. You got through. And then he would play the tape, which would be received in Bombay, where our office was, on another telex machine, or the telex machine in the office, on paper. So it would type out the whole story on paper, which would be torn from the machine. It would go to the sub-editor's desk. The sub-editor would edit the copy and send it down to the compositors, where they would key in again on a linotype machine and create hot metal text. Then they would take a proof of that and send it back to the sub-editor or the news editor or the sports editor, who would do a final check and then send it to the press for making a plate, what they called a plate.
All of this sounds heavily anachronistic to me, Ayaz.
And now, today, you can write a story of 600. There are people I've seen doing it on their cell phone. They're so good. They are feeding information to their offices through the day. It's like a running commentary that they would be giving, because back home, they're running a website or they're running a digital platform which is going live. So there's been a major transformation. And obviously, how you report and how you write has also changed, because everything today is covered on TV. So what am I telling the viewer further the next morning? which he hasn't already seen, is the challenge for every journalist today. If I've seen all the match and if I'm going to do a kind of a pedantic report, he played like this and he pushed to cover and he did, nobody will want to read it. He'll say, what the hell, yeah, don't bore me. So I have to have either sharp analysis or I have to have some inside story. I have to get some other angle to a story. I can talk about, maybe delve into some history, make an association, get some factoids about players who may have done well or not done well, and can I then spin a story around it? These are the challenges that every professional journalist now faces. And remember, today, apart from professional journalists, there's everybody in this world is a journalist. You have your Twitter, you have your Facebook, you have an opinion, and you have a right to an opinion. And there's nothing to say that the journalist's opinion is better than somebody else who's watching the game from the outside. So to remain relevant, you have to work hard towards remaining also better.
Absolutely. You spoke about, what the lay of the land was like back in your day. And now fast forward to today, look at you and me, a rookie journalist and a veteran journalist, speaking very seamlessly through
And
technology.
look at the medium of communication, and
Absolutely.
technology is driving a lot of how the media is shaping up and how the media plays out for the consumer of media. And today we're doing Hangouts, we're doing through Zoom and whatever, StreamYard. But where was
Exactly.
all this even 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
Absolutely. And One Play Sports is certainly at the forefront of this technological change. Akanksha Joshi is thanking you for your answer. She says, wow, this is so fascinating. Thank
Thanks,
you, sir.
Akanksha.
Akanksha, your question was certainly fascinating as well. Shubhi Agrawal is asking you an even more fascinating question, asking you how and where did you meet your wife?
How and where? So we met in Bombay, and then things got on from there, and therefore, uh, So it's been a long while that we met. It goes back about 45 years, I think.
But solid partnership.
Yeah, still going strong.
Still
Yes.
going strong. Superb. Then Amit is asking us, do you think Sachin Tendulkar is the best ever one-day opening batsman?
Yeah, so look, this is a interesting question. Somebody or some controversy which cropped up, but I think Shahid Afridi, the Pakistan all-rounder, who selected his team, and he didn't have players he's played with and against, and he didn't have Sachin in his team. Though he's got Virat Kohli in his team, but he didn't have Sachin. I think he had Adam
And
Gilchrist
this was the
and he
best
had
World Cup 11, right? Best World Cup
World Cup,
11, to
yeah,
clarify.
World Cup, and he had Adam Gilchrist and he had Saeed Anwar. So all these are great players, but to leave out Tendulkar, in my opinion, from that team, because Tendulkar's record in World Cups is staggering. Leave aside his record otherwise but that apart, I think if you just look at the body of work that he's done, number of centuries, number of runs, number of World Cup tournaments in which he's made the most runs or the second highest, amongst the top three all the time, is unmatchable so far. There are rivals. There have been, other great players. Our current sensation, Rohit Sharma, is it boggles the mind again as to how much and how far he can go. And don't forget, I think Sachin Tendulkar started opening the innings in his 82nd match, if I remember correctly. For the first 81 matches, he was batting lower in the order.
Right.
So one of the things we all know in limited overs cricket, the more overs you have to bat, the more runs you will make, the more likelihood of the century. So 88 matches, he didn't open the innings. And then after he started opening the innings, he never looked back. So yes, if you look at it, over the last 20 years, certainly the best opening batsman that in ODI cricket.
Absolutely. And that's when the century started flowing thick and fast, right? Because I think he didn't score his first ODI century until his 79th inning in ODIs.
Yeah, but he also, So I think for a long spell, he didn't open the innings. And then his 100 also came a little later. But the thing about, the frequency of hundreds that Sachin made showed, is in itself a reflection of his excellence. And it's not just limited to limited overs cricket. It also expands itself into Test cricket, and that's where Sachin becomes such a venerated figure in modern cricket history, or in fact in the history of the game. because he did everything that he did in Test cricket and limited overs cricket, and vice versa.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, of course, the landscape of Indian sports is changing drastically. Back in the day, of course, cricket was head and shoulders above every other sport, but now it's becoming more of a level playing field, relatively speaking, compared to what it was back in the day. So, what do you think is the next big sport in India? What's coming up? What's going to give cricket competition? And this is Neha asking us this question. What, according to you, is the next big sport in India?
In my opinion, the two sports that have the best opportunity to become big are football and basketball. Now, I know kabaddi has become very big. I know badminton we are doing so well that it's become big, and why not? I think it's great that this is happening in India. We have challenged the hegemony of China in badminton. In fact, the Chinese players and the Chinese establishment dreads the Indian players the most in badminton. Not the Koreans, not the Japanese, not the Malaysians, not the Indonesians. Kabaddi has come from the blue, so to speak. Out bold from the blue, it came and became so big because it's been packaged well, marketed well, and it just kind of took us back to our roots. Football and basketball, I'm bullish about for two reasons. One is that a they're very cheap to start playing. And now you might don't have to buy Air Jordans to play basketball. Which will cost you an arm and a leg. All you need for basketball is a hoop in every building society where kids can grow up playing, and it's very gender friendly. It's as exciting to watch when the women's game, much like tennis. So women's basketball is as exciting to watch as men's. So there's no kind of gender bias or which can creep in and make one less exciting than the other. Football, because it's so universally popular, and the spread of football is, I think, become stronger also because we now got access to all the best tournaments in the world. So there's a lot more inspiration. In urban India, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo are household names. It's a matter of time when they become household names if they aren't already in tier 2, tier 3 cities and even the remote, hinterland. So I think, and again, what do you need? You need a ball which you kick around. Cricket today is actually quite an expensive sport if you want to play. The bats and the pads, the paraphernalia, you need a good pitch to play if you're playing competitive cricket. So I think that basketball, it needs a little nurturing and it needs to be packaged and promoted well. I think these two sports I'm quite bullish about.
Understood. And the next question's a tad personal, Ayaz, but I'm going to unabashedly ask you this question. So, of course, throughout the course of your career, you've had the privilege of meeting lots of sportsmen, lots of cricketers, lots of sportsmen and cricketers have had the privilege of meeting you. Who are some of the sportsmen that you're closest with, that are pals of yours, that you can perhaps, call up at 11 p.m., midnight, have a conversation with?
I try and keep that distance, but I mean, obviously, lot of players, and a lot of them are obviously from India because this is your country, this is your team. You meet them more often than you meet anybody else. The thing is, and this is true for all journalists, that when you start young, you grow up with a set of players who age with you, and you keep meeting them constantly throughout their career. So you end up becoming their friends also, or at least good contacts itself. So for instance, Gavaskar is senior to me in age, but Kapil Dev is more or less my age. So he's a good friend, I would imagine. Ravi Shastri, Dilip Vengsarkar, Sandeep Patil, quite a number of them. A lot of them are from Mumbai, where I come from. Some other players who I know reasonably well, I think, are Viv Richards, Javed Miadad, when we were in the park. Cricket was, when it was being played, so I got to know him quite well. Imran Khan, though Imran was always a fairly aloof man. Wasim Akram, I know quite well. So I mean, these are the players that one thinks about. Other sports, I know Vishy Anand, uh, Adil Sumariwala from athletics, an administrator. Hockey players, Zafar Iqbal, Mohammad Shahid, Mane Pandey, Somaya, quite a few of them actually. So
Understood.
yeah, so across many sports, many disciplines.
Absolutely.
Anika Surya,
I've got a fairly good memory, Ayaz. That's one of my few strengths. I'll remember all the names that you mentioned, and then later on after the call, I'm going to badger you to connect me with all of them, so that we can all have a panel discussion together.
Yeah, why not?
Lovely. Great. Ayaz, another question for you. I'm pretty sure you'll have to think about this, but tell me whatever comes to your mind off the top of your head. Your top three favorite moments in the sporting arena. So not just in the cricket field, could be on any field that you witnessed live.
So yeah, so I mean, there are actually quite a few, but I can name a few of them certainly. The great race, Ben Johnson versus Carl Lewis in 1988 Olympics, where Carl Lewis is beaten, Ben Johnson wins the gold, and is found out for taking stanozolol, a banned substance, and the gold medal is taken away from him. So that is one of the most dramatic moments in my life as a sports journalist, and writing about it, seeing it firsthand, and then writing about it. Then of course there's India winning the World Cup in 1983, which we've spoken about at great length. So that's one of the things. Uh, there are quite Javed Miadad hitting a last ball six. That was such a stunning turnaround to the game, and then the impact it left on on the minds of Indian cricketers for a 4-5 year period. Uh, and I one of the most memorable experiences I've had is watching that fantastic partnership between VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid, which turned this test match in Kolkata against Australia 2001 on its head, and the series.
Were you at the ground?
We
Were you at the Eden Gardens?
Yeah, so we not only won the match, but we also won the series.
Right.
So I mean, there are quite the tight test match of 1986-87 against Australia. There have been only two tight test matches in the history of the game in about 140 years. One was in 1960-61, Australia versus West Indies. The other was Madras, 1986-87, India versus Australia. And a match of that kind, which builds up and reaches a climax like that till the last ball, you don't know what is going to happen. It can leave you completely drained. I remember, it was almost like I was chewing my nails. You couldn't sit on your feet. It was that tense.
Lovely. Ayaz, this next question gives you the license to brag a little bit about your CV. Humble brag, I should say. How many ICC 50 over Cricket World Cups, ICC T20 World Cups, ICC Under 19 Cricket World Cups, and ICC Women's World Cups have you covered in your fascinating, long, and illustrious career so far?
So, barring the first two, 75 and 79, I've seen all the other 50 over Cricket World Cups. ICC T20 World Cup, I've seen the one which is being played in India. I didn't go in 2007, though I was in England. And just to remind you, a lot of Indian senior players didn't go to South Africa for that T20 World Cup. Remember, Dhoni had a kind of a rag and bobtail team with him, which went and created history. Because the feeling was, ye pata nahi kya hai T20. It's like Mickey Mouse cricket, as one player told me. Don't ask me who. On the England tour. So I also, I had a chance to go. I could have gone from my newspaper. I said, yeah, choro T20 kaun jaake dekha. This is one of those things which will pass, but it didn't. So I didn't see that. But I saw the 2016 edition played in India. Several matches of those. And the ICC Women's World Cup, I saw the final just now in March, India versus Australia in Melbourne. And I've seen one in played in India. I think, if I remember correctly, 4 years back, 2014, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong about the dates. And so the only thing which I haven't seen, and this is a matter of some regret, is an ICC Under 19 Cricket World Cup.
But I'm pretty sure you'll check that off your bucket list very, very soon. I asked the next question that I have for you in this Ask Me Anything, and let me stress on the word anything, is who was the cricketer who labeled T20 World Cups as Mickey Mouse cricket?
No. Yes, my good feel. I think this is your badmashi, Anubhav.
Ask Me Anything gives me the license to do some badmashi, right?
No, that's what I said earlier. I will not say who said it, Mickey Mouse cricket.
Lovely.
When I write my memoirs.
The more politically incorrect the question, the better. That's why your question tha regarding your wife when you met her, I think that deserves 10 on 10.
Yeah.
Lovely. So we'll wrap up very soon. So unless you guys have more questions, we can wrap up. I asked the one question that I want to close with. I had alluded to this early in the conversation, so we can perhaps close with this. I'm pretty sure there are lots of budding journalists who look up to you, as like a father figure, as someone who's been there, done that, is still doing it in sports journalism. So if you had to give three pieces of advice, or however many you would like, to a budding journalist, budding commentator, budding columnist, budding person who wants to make it big in the sports media field, right? What would you tell him or her?
So, I mean, look, there are three basic requirements for any kind of journalism, I feel. One is that, you must have a sense of curiosity, apart from the passion. So, if you're a crime reporter, you must have a passion for chasing those kind of stories, or a political writer, or a business journalist, you must have a passion for that issue or for that subject. So, passion apart, you need to have, unquenchable curiosity, because that keeps leading you to information and stories. The other is you must have, you know, capacity for hard work and reinventing yourself, because otherwise it becomes like, I've seen it all, done it all, and there's nothing in it for me. You'll get bored out of your skull very fast, because any job is repetitive. If I watch 50 test matches, then the next 50 test matches you can end up saying, oh, what's the big deal, I've seen everything. But no, but if you keep finding, within, if the curiosity is insatiable and you've got the capacity to pursue your curiosity, you will find that there is a lot to learn. And the learning part, obviously, I must tell you, is that it never ends. So I may be 40 years in the profession, but I still have a lot to learn, because there's something new happening every day. So, I mean, and the third is also very vital, and I keep emphasizing this. It has nothing to do necessarily with only sports, but it's to do with the profession itself, and which is to do with integrity. So, you must, I feel it's important at all times to have a little distance in journalism from the subject. So, you may be very close friends with a star performer, but ultimately he's also a subject, you know. So, if there is an issue, you must have the ability to write about that issue, irrespective of, you know, don't let that go away from you. And ultimately, people respect that a lot, or respect that the most.
Absolutely. Well said. Ayaz, while you were answering that, I was aggressively taking down notes. मैं definitely इसको अच्छे से पढ़ूंगा, and one day I hope to graduate with highest honors from the Ayaz Memon School of Journalism.
You are already halfway there, Anubhav, don't worry.
Oh,
Or more
thank
than
you,
halfway.
thank you. I mean, I can't. I mean, you honestly, no praise is better than that. Lovely, Ayaz. We'll end on that note. Thank you so much, Ayaz, for joining us. I thoroughly enjoyed
Thank
this
you.
very candid, organic, long form conversation with you. I'm pretty sure all our viewers enjoyed this as well. Thank you so much for sending plenty of questions throughout the live stream. If you haven't already checked out our social media platforms, our Facebook page, our TikTok page, our Hello page, our Instagram page, as well as other social media platforms that we're present on, definitely check those out and make sure to follow us as well, such that you don't miss out on any of the content that we churn out on a daily basis. The other update that I have for you is that tomorrow we have another show at 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. It's the series called Cricket Classics that we are launching. So it's going to debut tomorrow. And we will be walking down memory lane and talking about India's triumph at the 2011 World Cup, specifically talking about the 2011 World Cup final that India won and beat Sri Lanka. So Ayaz will be joining me again for that discussion. And we'll also have a couple of very special guests, two members of the Bharat Army. I'm pretty sure you must have heard of the Bharat Army. If you haven't, then you should definitely Google it. It's this rambunctious, fanatical group of cricket supporters that pretty much visit every single stadium wherever India is playing to watch India play. So that should be a fantastic panel discussion. So we have that on the cards for tomorrow, 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time, same place on a One Play Sports Networks. Follow the pages. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, have a good night and cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.